all the things you're saying with Undying is right. It's correct. So this hero, you actually described the hero correctly. So you dominate the lane, but then you struggle to close out the games because you actually fall off. And it's completely correct. And I will tell you that if you have full control over your team's draft, that means if you pick Undying, you have to pick heroes that complement the hero, or any hero basically. So like there are so many heroes in the Dota, but in some games you're gonna struggle to play certain part of the game just because you have wrong heroes. So it's like Undying is a very early game heavy hero, very early game heavy hero. So if you want to play Undying and win the games, you have like two options. First option is to win the mid game so hard you're actually gonna win the game of that, which is like you have early pushing heroes that you can use to finish the game early. Perfect example. That's actually a perfect example, you know. So basically win the early game and then you are able to push the towers, right? Over and over again. But then there's another problem. Let's say you have Undying and then you have DP, right? What is the thing that your team lacks then? So every draft you make, you have to consider all those things and then go from there. It's like if you have like the plan to pick Undying, so let's think you can pick Undying, right? So that means you're probably gonna win the lane, because that's what usually happens when you pick Undying. That's the hero that wins the lane, unless enemy knows what to do, and then if he does, that means the lane is gonna go even. That's the worst case scenario basically. Then you have DP, because you as Undying you win the lane, but you lack some things, which is a push, which is lockdown obviously, right? So the other heroes have to account for that. So every time you pick Undying, you basically need at least 2 stuns within your team. So one of them should be most likely the support, because support, so Undying is a hero that wins the lane, but he doesn't really rotate that well, right? And when you play supports, it's like, so usually when I play supports, my plan is to obviously first draft first, right? So in most games, if I pick Pugna, let's say, I'm asking my team to pick lockdown. That's the thing I'm asking my team, right? So if I play Pugna or Undying, I don't play Undying, but let's say I'm playing it. So in between 2 supports, what I usually like to do is when you pick 2 supports in the first phase, you really want at least one with stun. That's the first thing. So right now, obviously, I would say Shaman is the best for it because you have like triple stun if you want. But other than that, you can pick like, you know, when you have at least one stun on support, that means you actually have ways to connect to the team. Because let's say you have DP mid, and then you have 2 supports with no stuns. So that means if you play DP mid and you have 2 supports with no stuns, even if you have 2 stuns on offlane and safe lane, that means the mid laner is on his own in most cases. It's obviously very advanced at this point, but so let's assume the mid laner of enemies like Storm, and let's say he doesn't lose the lane early on. That means at 6 minutes he's able to like do anything he wants on his lane because he's not afraid of anything, right? Because it's not like offlaner or the carry is gonna rotate. And obviously other than that, if you have no stuns, that means enemies will pick the heroes that just enjoy playing with no stuns, right? Versus no stuns, which is like Pac, Storm, you know, Ember Spirits, all the shit, right? So I wouldn't say picking Undying is a bad idea, but it's a very good idea. But you have to complement that hero, because I'll tell you, if I play like on half of my MMR and we have shit draft, it's gonna be very hard to win the games. Yeah, way harder. Yeah, because what is important in Dota is having your team basically being able to do a lot of things. And sometimes when you're unable to, you have to change that with items. Let's say Storm is your only gap close, right? Then your job as a support or both supports is just make sure that you give your Storm a good game, which is like, you know, securing runes, maybe stacking for him that comes closer to him, and then he's gonna have a decent game at least. Because the worst case scenario, he gets dumpster on the lane, but then he goes back to the jungle, or he gets the runes and he gets to rotate, and then he's gonna have a decent game, right? The first thing is, what I like to have is melee plus range combo on the lane. This is very important because it's way easier to play the game like this. So whether that's a support or carry or carry and support doesn't really matter. Like the both heroes usually complement each other so well. But keep in mind there are some heroes that are pseudo melee and pseudo range. So basically what needs to happen is you have one hero that just like is able to hit enemies, and the second hero is able to soak up the pressure from the lane. It's actually very simple, right? So that's the first step I usually aim to have. And I would just say that if it's not for that, I would much rather have double range than double melee, obviously. If you have double melee versus certain heroes, you're just gonna lose the game no matter what. Or rather the lane, but it's gonna be so hard. So imagine you play double melee against Viper, right? Or a DP. So that's the first thing I like to have in draft. And then, as for the supports, I like having at least one stun on a hero and one hero that is able to rotate. Sometimes it's the same hero, like a shaman. Basically, the movement speed is gonna be the main factor of it. Like Oracle is a good example as well, or Lich, right? There are slow heroes, and they don't really like buying boots first, in most cases. And then there's heroes that can rotate but don't really have stuns, right? Which is like patch between 5 minutes to 8 minutes. I made a movie on that. I think you're supposed to rotate a lot. So when you play together in a team, I think it's very good practice to around 5 minutes or even before that, just think about which is the lane we should bring 3 heroes to, like around 5 minutes. So basically imagine you're playing whatever the lane is for you, right? Okay, so the first question is, can you leave your lanes? That's the first question, right? So I'm assuming this Juggernaut, if you leave the lane, he's not gonna be dying there, right? He's against double melee. For the top lane, I think it's the same case. So that's the first step you need to make. So you're asking yourself, if I leave this lane, can anything bad happen here? So that's the most important part. And keep in mind it's 5 minutes, right? So looking at the mid lane, there is 2 bottle heroes. You really want to be at 6-minute rune. So right now you have to just ask yourself, so we established the fact that you can both leave the lane, basically. Now is the matter of fact, which is the more important, sorry. I would argue in this game, it's way easier for you to rotate to the top lane. If when you play position 5, you are babysitting the 1, right? And position 1 is the most important one. So first thing you need to consider if your position 1 is not gonna die, and is he gonna farm? That's the most important part. Because what happens if you rotate there and this guy is not allowed to touch creeps, or he just straight up feeds? That's a bad idea. But I think in this case, so we established that you can leave the lane. It's possible for you, right? If you can leave the lane and you're a Pugna of level 4, I think it's a very good idea to rotate towards the top lane, because you can kill this Sven, right? Or CM, for example. Doesn't really matter. You have Razors, so all needs to happen is just him linking up, and then you either like slowing him or just adding some damage. But another important thing is it's 5 minutes, right? So you have the catapult timing on the top lane. Because what can happen here, Snapfire shows up, right? He TPs there, you get a kill. That's not gonna lead to any pressure. That's the first thing, because you cannot push this tower. It's very hard for you to push the tower as a safe lane early on. So that's the first step. The second step is you're killing the offlaner, right? That means their carry gets to free farm. Your carry is free farming too, but their carry gets to free farm, and then you just kill 3 for that. If Snapfire rotates, killing this Slardar or Patch is the end game. So that's the best thing that can happen, right? I think it's way better for you to rotate as Pugna in this game and just try to kill this Sven. Because in the end, you get a kill or you don't, but you still have the catapult. So the worst case scenario is you don't kill this Sven, but he's low HP. You can still push this tower. So right now, I'm looking at this DK. We're talking about this exact moment, right? this DK is like 800 HP. And imagine you have Shadow Shaman here. I think it's better for you to rotate towards this lane still, and then you have a Shaman, so you're pretty much guaranteed to get a kill. And then you rotate towards the mid lane, because at this point, obviously there's gonna be runes, so that's the first thing, but the other thing is your cop is gonna get 6. So that's the 300 damage that you're missing right now. Because this kill right now is very hard for you. Because you're not gonna burst this DK with Shaman and Quap. Because you don't have the ultimate, right? So if you have the ultimate, you can make it work. But other than that, what's gonna happen is you come here, you stun this guy as a Shaman, you deal some damage, but this guy is like 5 stack as well, right? So he's gonna cry that his patch should be rotating towards his lane. And this patch can TP here and just like hook him out, or hook the Quap, or hook you and kill you. So you don't have the burst, but that's what basically I mean. But in 1 minute, you're gonna have the ultimate, and then you're gonna have burst. And then you can even plan for it. So you're asking your Quap, bro, I'm gonna come at 6 minutes, and we can kill this DK, so you can wear him down right now. Like, trade versus him a lot. Because I'm gonna come, and we can kill this guy. But that's the planning you have to go for, right? I mean, for position 4, it's kind of different. Because in the end, at position 4, if you leave the lane, you leave the tree. And usually, so if you leave the position 1 here, right, and you're position 5, then you're leaving the most important core. It's not always the case, but let's assume that, right? And if you're playing position 4, every time you leave the lane, you're basically leaving to help more important cores, which is 2 and 1. So if you can get those camps, right, and just farm them, and enemies won't punish you, go for it. The problem starts when enemies know what to do when you pull, and they punish you for that. For example, if you punish early, if you pull early, sorry, this guy is gonna struggle under the tower, and people in like good brackets will actually go under the tower and cast the spells, not draw aggro, but cast spells, you know, and make it harder for enemies to last hit, for your ally to last hit, right? If pull can get unpunished, then it's usually a good idea to pull. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's just unneeded. Sometimes you don't need to. So what I've been doing on my channel is like, I've been telling people in one of the videos that pulling is overrated, but because it is. But to be honest, pulling is very good tool. But the thing is, it's not as important as people make it to be. Because the most games I coach people is like, they pull a lot, they know that they are supposed to pull, but they come to the lane and they don't use their attacks. And then it doesn't matter if you pull, that's one movement in 1 minute. But every attack you can make on the lane is gonna change so much for your core. Because this guy is gonna be forced to buy regen, he's gonna be afraid of you, you know. As long as you pull, and then you farm the pull, and then you go back to attacking the hero, you're doing your job perfectly fine. Like, there's barely any game that you shouldn't pull if you're allowed to. If you're allowed to and enemies won't punish you, go for it. Because that's the way you get most experience, most gold. That's why positions 5 usually are supposed to get more gold at 10 minutes than position 4. Because in most cases, it's way easier for position 5 to just pull every minute and get gold that way and experience. It's very easy. Looking at this game right now, I would say this is a book example when you're supposed to leave the lane. Because looking at this, you've pulled the lane, you have double camp, so this wave is gonna get denied, right? Your Juggernaut is playing against double melee, so he's not gonna die, because there's no way, right? They have no way to stop him from just spin and just running away, right? But he's level 3. So right now, what can happen? If you leave the lane, you get the kill, yeah, he gets double the XP, even more. So basically what happens when you share XP, you lose XP. Because it's obviously a small difference. One lane creep is worth, I think, 53 experience, but if you share it, it's 26 for each hero. So it's obviously one experience, right, for every creep. In the end, it's like you get less XP than you get together. He's not able to die. you pull the lane, or he did pull the lane, and you can have impact on the top lane. This is a perfect example when you should rotate. Perfect. Actually, perfect example, right? So first of all, you're playing Pugna this game, right? So your first goal is to kill all the tier 1 towers in the mid game to play around timings and go for the objectives, right? So your objectives are tier 1 towers, if you can get them. So in most games, you're not gonna have heroes to just straight up just go and get them, right? Like Pugna. But sometimes you will, and that's the way you should play. So if you play Pugna, you obviously hit towers. But if you don't, the thing you should be playing around is the timings. And the timings is usually the ultimates or the items like a Blink Dagger. So in this draft right now, I would say your strongest timing is your Co-op ultimate. Then you have Snapfire ultimate. This is a strong timing as well. And then obviously the Omni Slash is a decent timing as well, but it doesn't really matter. It's like, yeah, exactly. So you don't really want to force Juggernaut to use his ultimate unless it's like let's say a Void. Then if you're playing a Void, his ultimate is actually so important that you might actually want to force him to do something like go to defend the lane. And then he uses the ultimate, he gets a kill, and then he goes back to farming. But for Juggernaut, it's fine if he has the ultimate for the next 10 minutes, as long as he's hitting creeps, right? So the easiest way to play for as a support is to play towards the timings. So you have to ask yourself, which timings do I have? Timing is usually either the ultimate or the certain item. It's not every item, but certain items like Blind Dagger or BKB. Basically, as a mid laner, a bottle of mid laner, you want to play around the runes every 2 minutes. So we're about 10 minutes. So I think it's very important for you to be able to kill heroes on the mid lane. And then if you get the kills or the rune, depending on that, you should aim to have impact on any lanes. So sometimes it's gonna be very convenient. Like you stay here and then you get the rune, and this DK is on the mid lane. It's very convenient for you to just kill him, right? Because you don't need to run anywhere. You don't need to focus any hero. So sometimes it's obviously different, right? Let's say enemy has, I don't know, mid laner that is not really impactful, like a Zeus. Let's call it this way. So enemy mid laner is a Zeus, and then enemy carry is Alchemist. Then it doesn't really matter if you kill the Zeus much, because in the end he's gonna have the ultimate anyways. He's gonna have bolts anyways. It's not like you can stop him from farming or doing things that he is able to, because in the end Zeus is all about the ultimate, right? It doesn't really matter if he gets farm or not. But for the Alchemist, then it's different. Alchemist, if he's stopped from farming, it's gonna be very hard for him to come back into the game. So in that case, but in this case, if there's like no clear-cut opportunity, you can, so even if it's a case like this, and you get a Zeus on the mid lane, but you get the rune, and then your Pugna here, and then the co-op is here, and if you kill this guy, you're gonna get the tower, then it's fine to kill him, if it's Zeus. Yeah, because it's turning into an objective. But if you go somewhere, so imagine it's kind of later, right? And then you are smoking somewhere, and then you find CM. Do you kill him on smoke? It depends on the game. But let's imagine you have Axe that has a Blink Dagger, right? And you know that the enemy is farming like there, and then you find CM here, and you're here smoked still. Do you jump this CM? I would say you don't. But sometimes it's gonna be like, okay, we just get the kill, it's fine. Or we get that kill, but we don't really commit much. So let's say you have Axe Blink, and then you use the Blink and you kill this guy, but you don't use the ultimates. Then you still can kill the guy right here. Or you can force him away. Like you don't use the ultimates, and you keep running on him, and he has to TP base. Then that's the right play. Using the timing is very important, and usually it's To be honest, as long as you use the timings, you don't need to worry much about other things like hero targeting and all that shit. Because if this co-op is able to kill people with her ultimate, she doesn't really mind if it's, 1 or 5. She's gonna snowball so hard, she's gonna be able to kill anyone later on in this game. Exactly, right? And sometimes it's different, right? When you're playing against heroes that are on the timing, then it's important to stop them. Let's imagine enemy has Phantom Lancer. So that's gonna affect your decision making as well. Let's imagine you have a PL on enemy team. Then your approach to his farming is gonna be completely different depending on the heroes you have. Because if you have heroes like Earthshaker, let's say, then you don't really mind him farming that much. But in some cases, you're playing against PL and you have 0 AO clear. That means that if he's getting farm, he's gonna win the game. Then it's very important for you to stop him from farming. And that's the most important thing. You should not let him give him space, any space whatsoever, right? So let's imagine this draft, but you have PL instead of Juggernaut and they have Earthshaker instead of Patch, right? That means in those games, so let's imagine your carry is getting countered hard. That means you're less likely to play towards him or play towards his timing. So let's imagine you have a PL that is very strong late game, but enemies have like 3 or 4 PL counters. That means the late game is not really favored for you anymore because they have counters for you. So you need to play towards earlier timing. It's like this matchup against Medusa against AM. So how come AM is a very hard counter to Medusa, right? But it's not like he's winning 70% of the matches. Why? Because if Medusa is playing against Anti-Mage, she knows that. And even though she's like one of the best late game heroes in the game, she's gonna play for very fast timing, like a Manta Butterfly, and try to end the game at this moment. Because she knows that in the late game, she's not gonna be able to win the game. So if the answer is, we win the late game, you can play towards the late game. And like, itemize for that, you pushing objectives is not that important, because in the end, you win the late game, right? But if you don't win the late game, then it's the matter of how do you win the mid game, and that's gonna affect your every decision. Like if you don't win the late game, you're more inclined to push the towers early, and then your item choices are not gonna be for the late game but for the mid game. So it's like you're not gonna get Midas in a game that you're not late game favorite, a clear cut obviously, right? Because that means you're putting your eggs into the basket that you know that in the late game it's gonna be very hard for you to win. So you don't really wanna reach that stage of the game. In most cases, the Lastpick is either the ultimate answer to enemies or a hero that they don't have answers to. Let's imagine you're playing mid lane and then they have no lockdown for you. Then you're very inclined to pick heroes like Storm Spirit, like Pack, like, all the evasive heroes, right? But if they have stuns, that means you're not gonna be able to play the game freely. So you really want to get a hero that basically has the BKB on its plans. Like imagine enemies have 5 stuns or 4 stuns when you have the Lastpick, right? That means you need to aim for a hero that doesn't really mind stuns. So whether that's a hero that jumps in and gets initiations and then he doesn't care about the stuns, like Magnus, let's say, or Tiny, or a hero that wants to get a BKB. And then for the mid laner, it's obviously, if you see the other mid laner, it's just a matter of you countering them on the lane in most games, right? Sometimes you're gonna lack damage, and that's the hero you're gonna pick, right? You're gonna lack damage, so you need the damage from the mid lane. And sometimes it's like you don't really lack anything, but enemies does. Like they don't have wave clear, right? And then you have the Lastpick on the PL, the carry, sorry. So you pick the PL. You either pick to counter enemies. So imagine, I don't know, they have like 4 melee heroes, right? Then some heroes that you're gonna pick are gonna be very strong. Like imagine enemies have Axe offlane, Ursa mid lane, Ursa safe lane, right? Then you can pick Razor for the mid lane. and then you just, even if the mid lane is like okay-ish, you can link up the Ursa and just kill him every time, and just or basically ruin his game as a Razor, right? Sometimes they have no stuns, then you pick Storm and you have free game. But in other cases, you're gonna get counter like this. So imagine you have no stuns and enemies pick Puck. What are you supposed to do? Get an Orchid on a hero that is like most viable to get it on. So against those hard carries that are AM, Alchemist, all the heroes, if you close them up, which is like taking the tier 1 towers, right? And then just like letting enemies have this portion of the map only. So if you let them farm on 30% of the map, that's fine for you because you're farming 70%. And it doesn't really matter if they farm, but they farm 30%. So in the end, even if they are strong late game heroes, that means it's like maybe this hero gets fat, but on the other hand, like 4 of your heroes are getting fat. And it's rarely the answer, it's rarely the case that you don't have answers to a specific hero that you cannot answer with the gold you have. So if you're playing against PL but you have a big gold advantage, even though you have no heroes to counter him, you can still get like, Radiance, Shiva. You can like get meme hammers and push the buildings or just like get his Raxes. That's the way you answer him. So there's any hero in Dota has a lot of answers to. It's just a matter of whether that's like a hero to hero specific matchup or like an item. So Puck, for example, right? This hero, what he hates is a point blank stun, which is like, a stun that you're not gonna miss, that doesn't have a projectile, like a DK stun. Same goes for Hex from Shaman or Lion. It doesn't have to be stuns. Like the instant silence from Skyrat Mage, he hates it as well, right? And sometimes you're not gonna have answer with heroes, so you have build them. You have to build them. So maybe you don't have a silence or stun on this pack, but you can build, Hex or Orchid and just get him this way. And obviously that forces him to play towards the game that he's gonna be answering to your items, which is get a Yule Scepter. But then if he uses the Yule Scepter, you can go for another Orchid and just Orchid him after that, right? Or just stun him after that. Or basically what that does is just stopping his snowball. So he's not gonna be able to, buy the items he wants because he has to get use to answer you. This is a perfect example because this hero is completely different if he's allowed to play in a certain way, which is not get Yule Scepter. Because if you're forced to get a Yule Scepter, that means you get, your Octarine Core or your Aghanims, and it's completely stops the snowball. That's the point. Oh, for the Morphling, right? So it's very hard to kill Morphling on the lane. But still, it's very important for you to harass him, to put him into position he's not able to last hit freely with his low HP pool. Because what he wants to do is have like, 400 HP and just last hit. But if he's hit over and over, and that means he's gonna be lower HP, and then he has to get more strength. And then he's gonna miss last hits because of it, because he has less damage, right? So putting pressure on Morphling is very important, and that's people overlook because I know that they do because I did. I used to be like this as well. I'm like, why would I harass Morphling? I can't kill him, but it does make a difference. Every last hit that enemy carry is missing is very important on the lane. So as long as you're able to just deny him from getting last hits, in any way you can, it's a good idea. Because sometimes the way is to just like harass him out of the lane. And sometimes it has to be like killing him. And sometimes it's just like you denying the creeps because you have more damage against certain heroes. Like against Razor. This Razor hero is very strong on the lane, but his damage is very low, right? So if he's not able to link up to the people, that means he's gonna have hard time last hitting, and you can deny him. Imagine you playing Shadow Shaman against Razor. You have like 20 damage over him. So you can deny every creep you want, as long as you're there to, click the creep. I mean, the point with the draft is when you have 5 man stack, it's fine to have any kind of hero as long as you don't put yourself into the corner. So that means if you pick Abaddon 5, it's a very good hero, but that means you don't offer anything other than safe. No damage, no stuns, no lane control. You basically are safe support. That means your other support should be on the other point of the scale. Yeah, spectrum, sorry. So yeah, if you have like an Abaddon, it's very good practice to have like, Hoodwink on 4. Because this hero offers a lot of the, lockdown, damage, all this shit, right? And the worst thing you can do is like pick Abaddon 5 and then pick like Abaddon 5 and Tiny 4. That means you have double melee hero that don't really do much on the lanes. Because that's another thing, right? You have one hero that secures the lane, and then the other hero needs to be aggressive on the lane. So like if you pick like a Tiny or Undying 4, for example, right? You have two lane secures, but you can't really rotate. On the other hand, sometimes you're gonna be playing in games that you have double heroes that are very aggressive, very like able to rotate, but then you find yourself with no save, and sometimes it's fine. It's certainly is better than having two passive hero. Having active heroes is better for you because in the end, I think so. In I think about Dota in a certain way that it's way easier for you to improve in Dota if you play actively and think actively. Because if you play passively, that's the so I was struggling with it. Not myself, but when I was climbing MMR, that's what I hated the most about the people. Which is like some people, and it's fine for them. It's fine because some people are just like that, and whatever I'm saying doesn't really matter for them because some people are coming back from work and they just want to click the buttons, and it's completely fine because they came here to enjoy the game, and there's this guy that wants to hit 10k and he's telling them to like group up. He's talking non-stop on the microphone. He doesn't fucking mind it. He wants to just click the buttons, maybe win, maybe lose. But what I mean by that, it's way easier for you to improve in Dota, and if you know you're here for the coaching session, so you want to improve, it's way easier for you to improve if you start playing proactively. Because if you start playing reactively, you only react to things, right? And you're not the leader. You're not, you have no idea if that was the right play or not. But if you think actively about the game and you play towards you being proactive, you can sometimes fuck up, but you will learn from it.